This is Lawrence Lotz, and welcome to the Wolf of Queen Street. Welcome back to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast series. But before we get started in today's show, just a big shout out to the studio that we are filming in today, Campfire Studios, an amazing location in the heart of Auckland. And from all studios, these guys are trying to not just provide these services, but bringing people together to take their message, to share it out to the world, to make a difference in the community, in our society today. And I'm so excited about this relationship between my podcast and Campfire Studios and where we can go on to next with what they're providing out there. And by all means, if you're in Auckland and you're in this game of podcasting or recording or content, you need to come check them out. But to my guest today, John Maybury Jr., a video and presentation coach, someone that has grown up around TV, radio, and everything else, and someone that I see on social media with a silky smooth voice that I'm a little bit some days jealous about. Also, that produces almost more content than I do, which is sometimes quite hard. I'm so excited to talk to you about your path, your journey, and also teaching people out now to become a speaker, presentations, even launching podcasts, content creation, and all that sort of tips and tricks, specifically to a lot of New Zealand companies, because they are not brave enough to put themselves in front of a camera. But John, welcome to the show.
Lawrence, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, mate.
Oh, thanks so much, John. Like I said, I've seen you across social media for quite a few years, and I finally thought I need to reach out to you, John, and say, hey, how's it going? Get you on the show and talk to you about that. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of what you're offering people today, let's go back a little bit and take
How far do you want to go back, Lawrence?
Let's talk about sort of your path, and I know something that was important that I've seen when I did a bit of a stalk on your backstory was radio, TV, growing up, also grow up with a bit of a stutter, and then struggling through your path of finding what actually made you happy to where you are to pretty much today.
And look, it's a really good place to start. That story is I was, as a youngster, it's kind of how my story rolls. As a youngster, I was surrounded by show people, MCs, actors, magicians, all sorts of really interesting people with interesting stories. Yep. And I remember as a 6-year-old thinking, geez, this sounds like a good thing to do. And that was it. I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to follow the footsteps of my father and my grandfather into radio broadcasting and show business. And it just like, yeah, cool. It was a thing to do. And then about the age of 9, I developed a stutter. And it was challenging. And it's kind of a barrier that a lot of people will face that I see in a coaching environment. They've got a thing. There's something there that stops them from moving forward. But I was like, hell no. I'm just going to, you go down the pathway. You went to speech and drama lessons, did lots of theatre and lots of voice classes, microphone technique. I remember an exercise. There was a book called Rhymes with Reasons, and it was for the R sound, right? And it was, I remember the rhyme. This is from like 1980, probably. Father's car is a Jaguar, and he drives rather fast. Arthur's cart is far less smart and can't go half as far. I would rather drive in my papa's fast car than Arthur's cart. You got really good at the R sound after that. But there were lots of other rhymes that you learned. And after about 7 years, 8 years, I didn't have a stutter. Yep. And I think a lot of it was just confidence. And then I worked in radio for 10 years, mainly music. I was a sports host on a station that no bugger ever heard of, with my father, creating the first father and son radio show in New Zealand. And I did some, commercial voice artist, a bit of TV. Yeah. And that's kind of where you learn some things, right? And I've always been a fan of playing with words. If you look at a script, how can you read that 10 different ways from an actor's perspective or from reading a radio ad? How can you deliver that differently each and every time. And for us as speakers, we just take it for granted that we know how to speak, right? But all of those years, all of that practice, and people said, "Oh, John, how did you get that voice? How did you get that voice?" And it's like, well, I practiced. Yep. I remember driving. I worked in travel before I got into radio, and I remember I rode a 1970 Mark III Cortina, driving from
very nice.
It was a shit show. It always broke down, but it was fine. Driving from home in Auckland's North Shore to work, going Auckland's original rock station, Radio Aoraki, or whatever it is. But understanding your voice, how low you can take your voice, how high you can take your voice. And I practiced that over the years.
It is so true. You're talking about with that voice. It's quite interesting to anyone that knows John or has been around John or look at it. By all means, there's a segment on John's website, and I think it's about a 90-second segment of your voiceover work. And I was listening through it just the other day, and I think you might have 10 or 12 segments cut up into that 90 seconds, right? And wow, the emotional roller coaster that each segment takes you through, like obviously with voiceover work and someone that needs to listen to it, you actually literally, you got to close your eyes and actually listen to it and see what the message is coming across. And each one of those took me on a different journey, depending on what you were talking about in the product. And some of them I even, recognized. And it was up, down, slow, foster, exciting, and all the rest of it. And it was amazing to see that. And like you said, it is something that us as speakers out there over a few years, it becomes natural to us, but to a lot of other people, they don't know that or don't understand that or don't know how to go to those next steps to realize how do I slow myself down, control what I'm thinking about, removing those, the people always have the worries, removing the ums or the thinking words, right?
Look, you'll really appreciate this. I was coaching a young guy doing his podcast, and I was just so excited to, for him to get in the equipment, saying, "No, I want you to get the headphones because I want you to listen to yourself." And he's 35, says, "This the first time you listen to yourself?" And he went, "Yeah." I said, "How'd you sound?" "I thought my voice was deeper." And it's just gold.
Oh, yeah.
It's in that moment to actually say, that's what I sound like. Now, we can change how you sound, or the people that know, like, and trust you, you've been around for 35 years, that's what you sound like to them.
Correct.
So just be authentic, own it, and move forward. But if I get people with accents saying, "I want to change my accent." Don't lose your identity. That's who you are.
100% with that. And I do laugh about it. I remember myself putting my headphones on, and I'm a bit more of an old school podcaster. So most of the times when I'm at home, I've always got over ears on, and it is a real interesting one when you hear your voice for the first time. And I know the voice in my head is not as deep and is not as loud as the voice that's coming out of my mouth. So I've had to have times, and also raised as South African, we are a very loud community, very fast-speaking community. So most times if there's more than one of us South Africans in the room, it gets very loud, very fast, very quickly. Sounds like an argument. So I've got to sometimes just bring that down, right?
There are exercises that you can do to, I've been using this really cool tool. It's called Udly. And it's an AI tool that you can use on video or audio. You upload the file, and it's going to assess your hedging words, your filler words, your ums, ahs, so's, okay, those words. And until you're aware that you do them, you just don't know how to change it. And you go, "Oh my God, I've been going around other BNIs and I've been recording how many ums or ahs people do when they present their business." And they're shocked. They're absolutely shocked when they hear that they had a 16 ums or ahs. And until you're aware that you do it, you can't change it.
I'm gonna challenge you a little bit on that point, and then we're going to get down into some nitty gritty and some nice tips and tricks about what you're doing at the moment. The ums and ahs is always an interesting one, right? It's that whole perception out there that you shouldn't and ah. But there's two sides. There's two sides of it, right? There's the and ah when I don't know what I'm doing, and there's the and ah when I'm thinking, as a thinking word.
Yep.
So the big thing is realizing the difference between the two and going, so I had to teach myself, so when I'm thinking, not to go just to be quiet. so that I can think and then respond. And that was the realization compared to the and ahs when I don't know what I'm doing. And that shows a sign of he's not sure about it. So whatever comes out of his mouth next is likely bullshit, right? And so that's where you got to look at it. And there's a lot of people out there, unfortunately, are driven by, I've got to be perfect. There's got to be no ums and ahs. And when I started my podcast career, I would go back when it was just audio. I would edit those out. I would spend... You'll laugh at me. I would spend 4 hours on every 1 hour recording to take out all these ums and ahs to make it sound like I was perfect, which I wasn't. And I remember to this day vividly when I realized that I'm wasting my time, and I was sitting at home. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was doing a public speech, getting this award. One of the most famous actors of the modern era stood up on stage and blah, 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 And I looked and went, if that dude can drop it like that, why the fuck am I spending 4 hours of my time of editing out all these ums and ahs? Because I'm thinking that being perfect is going to make me a better podcaster, and no, it's not.
And look, that you're absolutely right. I and ah, and for a long period of time, I just went, no, fuck it, I'm just going to or ah in how I speak. Yep. And what that's saying to the people that I want to be talking to is it's okay. Yeah. I just want you can get behind a microphone, get in front of a camera, and do your thing. And you'll get better at it. But don't let we know that perfection is a problem for Kiwis and for anybody putting themselves out there. You're never going to be perfect. You're never going to, I always, how I think about it is there are speech teachers who, well, hello there, Lawrence. Lovely to see you here today. I don't want to sound like that. Yeah. They're not the people that I want to be attracting. I'm not a Trinity College New Zealand Speech Board beautifully spoken person. Yeah. I don't want to attract those types of people. So I'm going to drop the occasional F-bomb. I'm going to drop the ums and ahs because that's imperfection. Yeah. And taking action, imperfect action.
Yeah, it's awesome. John, to anyone that was either just watching that or listening to it, watch how quick John goes into a part in a segment, but still has full control of his vocab. And it's an amazing skill that you've learned, John. And I don't think you realize that that's over time. And that's a lot what you help people with. And we'll get into that segment next. But it's something that really impresses me as being in the content creation and the audio side and that, how no matter how excitable you get, you still got full control of how you go. And I was thinking yesterday going, I wonder if I can break John. I wonder if I can make him lose his words and his control and get a bit flustered. And seeing the control he has at the moment, I think I might have an easier chance of making John change his profession than breaking his control of his vocab about what he's trying to communicate.
Be comfortable with the silence. You can ask me a question that I may not have an answer for. I'm going to go, I'm going to think about that one. Silence. It's okay to just stop. I know it sounds like, dead air. Yeah. Oh my God, it's like 10 minutes.
But that is powerful sometimes, right?
100%. It's the power of the pause.
Yeah, it is. It is. It drives a lot, especially on the visual side. On the auditory side, it's a little bit more interesting, right? Because if you listen on a podcast you're driving and there's more than 5 seconds, you understand it's from radio, right? It's something like a couple of seconds, dead air. All of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, the radio station's got down. But on the video side, where we stimulate it by both, that negative hold is so powerful because everyone that's visually looking is almost like, what's going on? What's next? What's not? Getting excited about it. And you can just hold that and utilize it to your power and to your will. So I want to get into this first thing, into the video, right? So video coach that you're out there at the moment and are trying to help brands throughout the world, but also specifically in New Zealand, to produce more video about their brands or their business and get in front of a camera and be more confident. Talk me through that and some insights and some tips you've seen that brand should follow or take those steps to actually do to take that next step into the video creation.
When I first started being a video coach, my piece of resistance here is, what do we talk about? It's always the first thing. And I find that, I was on LinkedIn and people were doing educational content. And we know that educational content it demonstrates your expertise. But the one thing I learned very quickly was if you posted an authentic personal story, it got way much more engagement. And us as content creators, we like a little bit of engagement, right? We like to have the likes and the comments, etc. Ultimately, it's about impacting those people. So I kind of, I just experimented with different, I call them styles, but topics, whatever you want to call it. And largely it's personal story gets the most engagement. It connects us with people.
Yep.
So
cats. A photo of a cat.
Look, we can go a little bit further on from, Facebook land or Instagram land. Here is what I had for dinner last night that, some people, I'm thinking particularly LinkedIn has been the channel that I've focused on, and people think, but it's LinkedIn. Yep. It's business. I can't talk about personal things.
Correct.
Well, actually, no, people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. And we need to share personal content about ourselves. And, look at Jason Gunn. I mean, it's like he's one guy that doesn't need to post personal content because everybody knows who he is.
Yes, 100%.
Right? So for his strategy, he can just go straight into educational content and bring value because already, I've seen him on the telly for X number of years. Yep. But if you're not known for your community, you need to build out that resonance of who you are first of all. So if you're going to take some action, do an audio or video yourself. A lot of my students, people in my network, see that this is a John video because I've said, tell me 3 things about you that your audience doesn't know. Yep. How I'd start 3, 2, 1. I want to tell you 3 things about me that you don't know. Start. Think about what the audience, in those first 3 seconds, what's in it for the audience.
Yep.
It's not about, hello, my name is John Maybury and I'm a radio announcer. It's not about that. Yep. It's not about who you are. What's in it for your audience? And I know as a creator, it's all about the audience, right? It's all about you listening to or watching this podcast. So personal content, and then it's okay, we need to demonstrate proof. If we think about the customer journey of people, who are you? Do I like you? Do you deliver on what you say, right? So the next has got to be an element of proof. And I call it a client success story. And it's a short form, 3-act series, setting conflict resolution. We don't have to go into a hero's journey here of a 12-step hero's journey, but it's just 3. This is a client, a few things about them. This is their one problem. And this is where they are now. Not what you did for them, just what was the result they got. With a nice little call to action. So if you want that same result, we should talk. And that's one of my stock kind of scripts that I suggest people do. Then the next thing is educational. But you've still got to do, I would say, 5 personal type videos. So 3 things. What are your values? Who are your mentors? What's your why? What's the story behind what you do? Then maybe 3 or 4 client success stories that frame different types of clients or different problems that you solve for your clients, and then educational. And I've always tried to treat educational as, the challenges that I find a lot of new creators is they go into a problem and then they don't know how to get out, right? Starting is actually easy, but finishing is really hard because you're like, I'm in front of the camera and I might as well just keep on talking. No. So, and this is where I'm all about structure. So what's the one problem you're going to talk about today? Give a short example of the problem and give away some value. And knowing how to end your video or your podcast, and I say ask an open-ended question to encourage engagement.
Again, totally.
So, those are the 3 kind of stock standard script styles that I work with. And then there's the next step of, okay, let's just map out what they will look like, have a rough idea of what you're going to say. I don't like scripting out videos because you don't learn anything. And most people don't have an auto cue at home. And when they do, my name is John Maybury, and
doesn't come
across as natural. We want those moments, those emotional pauses of going, oh, fuck, what do I say? You might be able to edit that out, but it sees that that emotional piece in between sentences.
The real piece, actually.
The real audience.
we see so many companies, you totally relate to this, and I see it with clients and people as well, is the fear of, hey, the people are going to judge me because I'm imperfect. I'd rather have imperfect than anyone that is perfect. So I speak to a lot of people and say, if I see a company or brand launch perfectly, I'm not interested, because that's truly unrealistic. No company's perfect. No brand's perfect. I want to see the failures. I want to see the mistakes. I want to see the growth.
100%.
Growth is more important to me as well, from a content and a journey. And we just got to realize to the audience or to people that want to launch that audience out there, that is perfectly great. I still regret to this day that my first 16 episodes of my podcast series, I did it on audio only. I didn't do it across video, because I would love to have gone back to my first one and take a look at it. And the biggest story from this one was, when I got into podcasting career, I went and listened to Joe Rogan. I still follow some of his shows. Some people support him, some people don't. But he's got over 10 years of podcasting. I spent 2 years and I listened to him every day, all day. I think I did 500 episodes in 2 years to get my insights and learning and the skills and picking that up. So I sort of did a 2-year education myself in, sort of 10 years in radio, learning from what I would take up. And the funniest thing was, his first episode was him and Brian Redband sitting in front of a computer talking, and then switching on these features, and the features in the background was snow. And I remember Joe Rogan is like, oh, cool, we can make it snow while we're talking, and then stars sprinkling. And you look back at it and you're like, one of the most richest podcasters in the world today, and you look at his first episode and you look back and it's so cringy, but it's amazing to see that. Mm-hmm. Now, from a brand and business, that is true and awesome and amazing to see, right? To go back to any of your clients or any of my clients and go, look where you've gone. And then when someone sees it, is they build a better relationship with that, right? Because they can go, I can see you true. I can see you honest. I can see you willing to take that risk and show your truthfulness. I've had a fridge blow up during a podcast when I was filming my man cave. I was sitting there and literally it went bang and blew up. Recording, I stood up off the camera, walked around, shut it all down. There was literally 60 seconds of me not sitting there with my guest on the other side, came back and went, okay, sorry about that. And I left it there. Totally relatable to the audience, because that's real world.
Look, I met a builder yesterday who's been in business for 6 months, and we were talking about pitching, and I said, you should do some proof videos. Have you got any Google reviews? He said, no, I don't have a website. And so you've built your business with builder, right? Yep. So there's plenty of work out there. But he wants to do some recruitment videos. And I said, do you know how to do a recruitment video? I said, yep. I'm going to pull out my phone. I'm going to say, my name is such and such. I've got a builder. I'm a builder. These are some of my team, etc. Some of the work. Come and work with it. I'm going to put that up on Instagram, and I'll get plenty of applications. So we've all seen people in an echoey room with no microphone, no lighting, bricks, and people have commented, oh my God, that is such an amazing, I got so much value from what people love. The raw. Yep, raw gets so much more engagement, and because people, there's no pretense around it. It's not like there's no, ultimately it comes back, who is your audience? What does your audience expect?
100%. One of the
most. If you have an audience of filmmakers, well, yeah, I'd probably suggest you go to a videographer and you get it shot properly, and because your audience is expecting some level of production.
So true on that. Understand what your audience. One of the most humble things, and John, I know you'll know this, is what I think or what you think your audience wants is usually wrong.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, right? And that's the biggest thing from the learning and from content creation, right? And video to anyone that's listening or watching is, I learned that the hard way. For a year when I launched it, I was like, cool, this is what they want. This is how I'd want it. And I put it out there. It looked amazing. And I went, where's it gone? Where's it growing? And why is nothing happening? And then finally I had to take that humble pie and went, some of my fans, can you tell me, am I doing the right thing? And the answers were totally opposite to what my expectation. My show was too long. We didn't provide too much education. It was more of a shooting the shit show of, hey, let's talk for an hour and a half and how you doing and great and tell me some stories. Where was the education? Because my podcast series is it's not entertainment, it's more education based. Yep. So people in content world want to be entertained or educated. And I found myself in the middle and I wasn't clear enough on that. And that's the sort of stuff learning. But that's the learning stuff you've got to be willing to do, right?
Your ego.
Yeah.
I'm doing a podcast. I'm doing a podcast. And it's all about me. And that's, in your planning, what does your audience want?
Yeah.
And, if from a brand strategy perspective, if you're going to launch a product into the market, but they do focus groups, and they have their audience come in a group, and they ask questions of those focus groups, and they get some insights about what does the audience want around that particular product. So then when they go to market, they're kind of 80% there, or the 90% there, or they're absolutely certain that's what the audience wants. And that's the level of detail you need to go into in your planning any type of content.
Yeah, totally. How about we shift away from video at the moment and we move right into, to anyone that's learning about John, video, being interviewed, public speaking, launching a podcast. I know it's something just recently launched with your brand. We're talking about off air, John's amazing skills to help you launch a podcast, looking to do this sort of game, reach out to him. But let's talk about that other thing that a lot of people sort of fear is either being interviewed or public speaking, right? It's a little bit different in itself, but there is some fundamentals at the bottom that can give people some tips of, hey, if I have to stand in front of someone else and talk in front of one person or group of people, what is some of the tricks that I need to learn, and how do I keep calm, and how should I engage and think about my responses? I'd love to know your thoughts about that.
Goodness, that's such a big topic. Look, let's just talk about the interviewing thing, because, we have two of these and one of these. So just listen. Your response will come from your guest's answer. And just listen for that and trust. I know it's really, when you've got a list of questions, so, just trust that if you listen, the next question will naturally flow. And that's what the audience wants to hear, is your willingness to dive into, and tell me more about that. If you think about good interviewers, they're listening for that. They've asked that question because they know that's going to lead to that and that. They might have some other questions that they want to get through, but from an interviewing perspective, just listen and and again, it's a little bit of element of public speaking, be comfortable with the silence, that we're thinking, okay, cool, here is my next question. Translate that to in front of an audience. Well, the first thing is being comfortable with the audience. Knowing who the audience is the most important thing. So how do I present? Am I going to use loose language? Am I going to drop the occasional F-bomb? Who is that audience? So I think there's understanding who the audience is. Doesn't matter, video, podcasting, speaking. Know who the audience is. Have some time researching who they are. Nerves. Well, I always say, again, coming back, do a warm-up. Warm up the voice. I have this lovely exercise, big piece, little piece, warm up before. I think you get used to getting on a microphone, right? You've kind of, but if I was going off to do a voice job, I'm like, just warming up the lips and the tongue and the face. So then when you get behind a microphone, it comes out okay. So dealing with nerves is you're just concerned. You just want to do well, right? And trust in your ability that you've rehearsed or practiced. Have you rehearsed or practiced today? You've prepared, right?
I've prepared, yes.
Right? You've got notes in front of you. Therefore, you've done the work of going, okay, I have a rough idea of what my audience wants to know, the questions that I think they want to know. And there's some few things I'd like to know, which is the educational piece. But he's prepared. And, I was talking to a guy who presented at BNI today, and he said, I've got 20 slides, and it came out absolutely perfect when I presented to myself in the computer yesterday. I said, did you open your mouth? He said, no, it was in my head. Well, that's not any good, is it? Because in your head is not what's coming out of your mouth.
Correct.
So, understand your audience, be prepared, rehearse, and warm up. And that's even before the curtain goes up and, the spotlight's on you. Then it's, again, have the audience engage with you. Start with geez, I'm bloody nervous, aren't I? I'm shaking in my boots, and everyone will be like, they want you to do well.
We all do that. We all want that, right? The going on stage the first time, or again on the interview, or in front of a stage, in front of a group. We all have that sort of that fear, and then once that split second, that once you get started and into it, and as you do it more and more, you get better at it. I did a little speech at a local school just about a month ago to 13 and 14-year-olds.
Cool.
And I was more nervous to talk to 13 and 14-year-olds in a room of corporate business type people, because I was like, am I going to be relatable? Am I going to be able to understand what they thought about? And I'm lucky that I've got 2 young kids at home. So talking about rehearsal is I sat my my boy turns 11 in a couple of weeks. I sat him down on the couch and I did my segment with him. And he laughed and smiled and it totally was relatable and he loved it. And I went, great, the kid related to it. And when I went and did it at the school, I actually had the principal come over to me and goes, that was amazing. It was totally relatable to the kids. You made it in such a way. I brought Harry Potter into it. I brought magic wands and everything else because I had to respect my audience. I was still totally nervous, but I had to respect my audience, understand how they would relate to it, and then try and produce my message through that path.
But you've, a really cool exercise. This is something that's a little bit random. But if you've never been in front of an audience before and you want to try and be as comfortable as possible in front of that audience, is stand in front of them without saying anything and observe what's going on in that little voice in your head. So I remember doing some MC training with a guy who was just, he didn't have an audience. So I said, okay, I want you to go and stand in the middle of Queen Street. You're like, this is the Wolf of Queen Street. The middle of Queen Street on a peak, this was pre-COVID, and stand when all of the people are walking towards you. Just go and stand and look at them.
Yeah.
Look at them as they're coming. You can imagine, oh my God, this guy's a bit bloody weird. But it's a great exercise in being comfortable, or at least understanding that, they're looking at you and they might be thinking some weird stuff.
They might be thinking at all.
Or they might not be thinking anything at all. Yeah. They're just looking. And I think that's the thing, is people are just looking at you. They're not thinking anything. Well, they're judging and assessing. That's what they're doing. There's no way of getting out of that.
Yep.
But it's not about you. You're the vehicle to move something forward, to tell a story. It's all about the audience.
Yeah, totally. It always is, and that's like I said earlier. It's one of those clicks when you realize they're humble pie, right? And they're getting that ego out the way. It's about the other person, the group, the individual on the other side of the camera or on the stage. Once you can relate to what their expectations is, it's great. It doesn't matter how nervous you are and you communicate. Some of the best public speaking has been the most nervous person, but given the audience what they wanted to learn in the education, right? And then it's
look. I say when you're on camera, you're looking down the barrel on you. If you make it about the person you're talking, the one person you're talking to, video and podcasting, one-on-one, public speaking, obviously one to many. But I'm just talking to Lawrence on the other end of that camera right there, and it's all about Lawrence. I want to do the best for Lawrence. And then suddenly this weight lifts off your shoulders that it's just not about me. Yeah. And the more you do it, the easier it gets.
And it just flows on from there.
Yep.
So last piece I want to get to, John, is obviously, as we spoke about, you launching this new piece to help people launch a podcast or considering looking into it. I would love to know, do you feel... podcasting became big during COVID because brands were sitting at home. They weren't sure this was the next level. But do you think it is sort of an area that businesses should just automatically look to add it into their bucket of content creation, that everyone should have some form of podcasts? Not just that people considering, but all brands should consider getting into.
Look, there's entertainment podcasts and there's educational podcasts, right? I'm saying that businesses, if you want to put your ideal client in the interview chair, then not only are you building an audience and educating them, but you're putting your ideal client in the chair, developing a relationship with them. They're adding value to your audience. There's an ROI for winning business. It's so much easier to say, hey, Lawrence, we've never actually met before. I'd like to do business with you. Well, I'm not going to say that, but would you like to come on my podcast? I'm going to promote you to my audience. I just want you to tell your story.
Mm-hmm. It's so powerful.
And it's so powerful. People go, sure. And, I hadn't met Lawrence in person today, and he's a normal guy, sort of South African, whatever, and it's you get to spend time with them, and then he's going to promote me on his channels to his audience, and my reputation in your audience is raised.
Correct.
So my respect of you has raised, and it just brings us closer together. So for me, it's about relationships of interviewing your ideal client first and foremost, and then obviously because people are like, oh, I'm going to create a podcast, I'm going to build an audience. Yeah, it's going to take some time. Yeah. So it's actually about the spending time with someone who's going to bring value to you, and you can develop that relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, it's people out there, worried, how do I do it? Where do I go? How do I get it started? And that sort of stuff. Don't worry, John's got you sorted, right?
And look, there's lots of ways to skin the cat. Yep. You and I we chatted before the show, is we both like on camera on a live stream, because there's no production, there's no cost of a studio, there's a little bit of being prepared. Correct. And knowing that it's live. Live is so much easier. Why don't you just do live, and everyone just gets, what if I make a mistake? Then you move on. Yeah. You're like, oops, we're just going to continue on. It's so much easier, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did a live for the beginning part of the year was, I think, 4 or 5 months. It was just continuing lives. And the only reason why I shifted off doing lives at the moment was I was noticing that on some of my platforms, the platform supported non-live videos better than live videos. So that's the only reason why I shifted off some of that creation. But I did for a long period of time, and I thoroughly do enjoy the lives, and because it's just got a different twist to it and different quirkiness to it, right?
It's got an edge that okay, I need to get it right. Mm-hmm. There's no going back.
Yep, we totally agree with that. John, look here, there's so much more we can get into today.
We could talk
speak
another
for hours, right?
Hours.
But to anyone else out there at the moment that's listening or watching that loves what John has had to say, would love to learn more, where can we find you? Where can we reach out to you?
I'm always on LinkedIn, quite a bit. Send me a connection, send me a DM, website. johnmaybury.com is my email address. Oh my God, I mentioned that. I'm going to get spammed. You find me on LinkedIn or website, johnmaybury.com.
Yeah, amazing, John. Thanks so much for that. And to everyone else, if you're thinking about considering about the spectrum of content, the audio, the video side, the skills, taking it from that next level, just speaking to someone. John is a person that's been around for many years.
Gray hair.
Many years out there, and please, by all means, reach out to, because it's amazing. Like I said, I always see John's content, and it's the voice, the skills. I was unable to break John today, no matter how excited.
The man love today,
right?
Yeah, baby.
And thanks so much for John coming on and doing this segment for my audience, for them to learn from that. And always, thanks for coming over to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Amazing. And just at the moment out there, can I ask one last question to the audience? I'm not going to say, hey, like and subscribe if you like it. To me, I don't care about that. What I care about is if there's someone out there that needs a little bit of help, if there's someone out there that could learn, pick up, or just need some insight and tips, just please reach out to them, support them. We're in a society today that needs the help more than I need the publicity. Let's go out there, let's help people, let's try to make a difference to ourselves and to everyone else around there. But at the end of the day, have a beautiful and powerful day, and hope to see you soon.